This is from Psalm 19, verses 1 to 6. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims God's handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard, yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In the heavens, God has set a tent for the sun, which comes out like a marriage partner from a wedding canopy, and like a strong person, runs its course with joy. Its rising is from the end of the heavens, and its circuit to the end of them, and nothing is hidden from its heat. For ancient meditations on nature, we give thanks.
A reading from Luke's Gospel, chapter 8. One day Jesus got into a boat with the disciples and said to them, "Let us go across to the other side of the lake." So they put out, and while they were sailing, Jesus fell asleep. A gale swept down on the lake, and the boat was filling with water, and they were in danger. They went to Jesus and woke them up, shouting, "Teacher, teacher, we are perishing." And Jesus woke up and rebuked the wind and the raging waves. They ceased, and there was a calm. Jesus said to the disciples, "Where is your faith?" They were afraid and amazed and said to one another, "Who then is this, that they command even the winds and the water, and they obey?" For the stories of Jesus and his friends, we give thanks.
The Rocks Pulsate by George MacLeod. Invisible, we see you, Christ beneath us. With earthly eyes, we see beneath us stones and dust and dross, fit subjects for the analyst's table. But with the eyes of faith, we know you uphold. In you, all things consist and hold together. The very atom is light energy. The grass is vibrant. The rocks pulsate. All is in flux. Turn but a stone, and an angel moves. For contemporary words of faith, we give thanks. In our shared reflection this morning, Lynn Eggins is going to share something of the work of volunteers assisting at the Sydney Olympic Park. This is local, practical environmental care at its best. Gerard McEvilly is going to share some of the work and effort of the Pitt Street Earthweb team, which ranges from the local, what we do here at Pitt Street, through to global efforts for climate justice. But first, I have a question to ask. Actually, it's not my question. 5 years ago, during the season of creation, our then Minister in Placement, Margaret Mayman, asked an important question. Some of you might remember it. Anyone? Why, Margaret asked, do we celebrate the season of creation rather than simply the season of the environment? What difference does it make? Surely it's just semantics. I remember the question because it took me some time to begin to answer. And some days I'm still not sure about the answer. It's been on my mind recently because I've been doing the paperwork for ARC, that's the Australian Religious Response to Climate Change. I've been doing the paperwork for ARC to gain tax deductibility status for donations. A lot of paperwork involved, I can assure you. You won't be surprised to learn that the tax office doesn't have a category for God's creation or even Earth. Fortunately, it does have a category for the natural environment. So in ARC, we've had to make changes to our constitution. But as you'll hear from Thea Ormerod next Sunday, that doesn't change ARC's fundamental mission to care for God's creation. Today's psalm and the contemporary reading from the Iona community are very suggestive in terms of responding to Margaret's question of 5 years ago. The psalmist boldly declares that the heavens are telling the glory of God day by day and night by night. God has provided a canopy for the sun. But immediately the psalmist appears to contradict themselves. The voice of the heavens goes out to the entire earth, and these heavenly words go to the end of the world. The poem or prayer from George MacLeod is one of my favourites when pausing and reflecting on creation. I've never been to Iona, but I'm told by people who have that the rocks really do pulsate. Here is my short but still tentative answer to Margaret's question. I suggest that the language of the environment does not speak and does not have words. The natural environment, in one sense, just is. And of course, there's a fair amount of legitimate self-interest in Homo sapiens looking after the natural environment. In contrast to that language, the language of creation does speak day and night from one end of the world to the other. More than simply being there, creation evokes, creation insists, creation invites. To borrow a distinction from Paul Ricoeur, the environment seeks explanation and analysis. Creation calls for understanding and connection. The environment is to be examined carefully in a rigorous scientific manner. Environmental protection must always be based on good science. But within the circle of faith, creation calls for more, for understanding as well as explanation. Ricoeur refers to this as a surplus of meaning. A surplus of meaning. Creation calls us to engage in the dimension of what Laissa Clegg shared last Sunday in the language of First Peoples, Gadiri and Ganar, deep listening and connection. Let's protect the natural environment and care for creation.
This is just a glimpse of the care being given by management and volunteers to Sydney Olympic Park, fondly known as Sydney's beating green heart. Located on the traditional land of the Wangal people on the Parramatta River, it is not just a sport and entertainment hub. The built environment at Olympic Park is enhanced by a large and beautiful span of salt and freshwater lakes and streams, forests and grasslands, providing habitat for many permanent and migratory species of many genera. Some are rare and threatened, including plants, birds, amphibians, fish, microbats, reptiles and mammals, living around a playground and recreation space for Sydney-siders. The whole area is under the care of the Sydney Olympic Park Authority and managed by a huge permanent staff of ecologists and volunteers from interest groups. These volunteer events help Sydney Olympic Park to understand if management is being successful or if changes need to be made to retain the park's incredible biodiversity. Just to name a few of the ways in which this is done. Conservation Volunteers Australia improve frog movement corridors across the park. Olympic Park supports a priority population of the endangered green and golden bell frog and has a long-term habitat management program for this species. These awesome volunteers clear weeds and plant native tusk-forming grasses that will assist the green and golden bell frog to move between the ponds they inhabit. Volunteers from the Frog and Tadpole Study Group undertake auditory frog surveys to record calling frogs and help understand where the endangered green and golden bill frog is breeding. Members of the Cumberland Bird Observers Club and others undertake the annual spring bird census to identify trends and changes in bird population. This information is used to implement and manage intervention strategies. This is an annual 8-week survey, and the 2022 Spring Bird Census represents the 18th annual survey of birds across Sydney Olympic Park. The original landscape design at Cronos Hill in the centre of the park was for low grass and tall eucalyptus trees, perfect habitat for noisy miners. The Spring Bird Census documented the loss of small woodland birds at the same time as populations of urban adapted birds, such as the aggressive native noisy miner, were increasing. To support greater numbers of the smaller woodland bird species, a middle story of vegetation needed to be inserted under the trees with mulch and log piles to provide more food resources and to discourage the noisy miners. The Spring Bird Census continues to monitor the success of this change in habitat complexity. The Spring Bird Census also identified in 2006 that red-rumped parrots numbers were declining at the park. In response, nest boxes specifically designed for this species were installed in several places across the park. The parrots seemed to be best impressed with the boxes at Archery Park, and so in recent years many more nest boxes have been installed there to support a growing population of these lovely little parrots. Again, monitoring programs help park management to understand parrot preference of box size, material and orientation to improve the project. All in all, Sydney Olympic Park is being cared for well by management and volunteers alike.
Thanks so much, Lynn. I'm going to talk about the Earthweb team. This provides a focus for Pitt Street activities around ecology, including climate change. Fiona Bennett and I share the role of convening the group. Caring for creation is quite a big task. So we're very strategic in choosing what to focus on, and we see this as 3 levels. Firstly, our building and operations. Everything we buy or use at this church has an environmental impact. We think it's important to minimise this as a community, partly to model the action we desperately need from large polluters and governments, and I'll come back to that. Change in a community is never easy. But Earthweb's role is to facilitate change by offering suggestions, whether it's about energy-efficient light globes or heating options. This wonderful Pitt Street community always seems to be open to these discussions, and so together we are making progress towards zero emissions by 2030 at the latest. The second level is congregational awareness and education. This is about each of us, individual Pitt Streeters, making a difference through our own actions. Maybe through switching our own power provider, or looking at where our super is invested. Earthweb regularly puts info in the weekly e-news, and we've also set up an ecology table with a wide range of resources to use or books to borrow. Many of these resources, along with the liturgy from, for example, these Season of Creation services, give so many helpful perspectives on why caring for creation is intrinsic to our faith journey. Among these many faith perspectives is the demand to seek justice. Personally, every little thing I can refuse, reuse, or recycle reduces the legacy of landfill I'm leaving behind for my granddaughter. But this can seem so futile when we look at what's happening around us right now. How is it just for our brothers and sisters in Pakistan to be underwater when collectively they have hardly touched the carbon dial? So this brings us to Earthweb's third point of focus: engagement with wider faith and community group activities. As I said before, we here are trying to model the action we desperately need from large polluters and governments. But modelling on its own is not enough. We also need to get their attention. What can we few people do? Well, we partner with other groups. That's what we do. It's more efficient and also more effective. Firstly, with our community here in the city, by sharing our wonderful space, perhaps sharing movies that move us and encourage our work for a better planet. By the way, helping to manage those events might be your role with Earthweb. We're looking for your help. Secondly, through the wider Uniting Church, we've engaged with Synod and agitated to make climate advocacy a high priority through the Uniting Climate Action Network, or UCAN, and that's doing a great job. Thirdly, through people of many faiths via the Australian Religious Response to Climate Change, or ARC, as Warren referred to. And through ARC to multi-faith events around the world, like the one coming up on the 13th of October, which in Sydney will be at St Pat's Cathedral in Parramatta. All are welcome. It's going to be a great event. ARC also links us to the wider, if you like, non-religious climate movement, which in Australia is focusing on stopping the flow of money that's in place to open up a staggering 69 new coal mines for export. It's nothing to do with Australia's emissions, it's about making money from export. At Pitt Street, we've started a conversation with the staff at our nearest bank down the road. But I can assure you, we're being much more polite than Jesus was with the moneylenders in the temple. So that's Earthweb, taking action individually, as a congregation, and with the community. Thanks so much to everyone at Pitt Street for your challenges, your ideas, and for helping us to seek justice through events, letter writing, or just treading a bit more lightly on God's earth. Amen.